At best, the alien abduction phenomenon is a terrifying, traumatic experience. At its worst, well, we think they sometimes take people and don't put them back.
I lost my mother and brother to this trauma. He murdered her, then killed himself.
These women are being used as human incubators, with all their children stolen away into the night.
A 6-foot-tall entity of blue-white light paralyzed me, then bent down and said into my ear, "Hi, Steve." It knew my name.
We hear gruesome stories of experiments and dissections. Imagine dying on a metal table while paralyzed, surrounded by alien faces. It's a real horror story. Welcome back, everyone, to our Gnostic TV show, Abductions 101, UFOs and the Paranormal Connection. I'm your host, Leslie Shaw.
And I'm Stephen Shaw.
We're the authors of the UFO book, Who They Are and What They're Up To. And our wonderful guest tonight is going to be Nate and Thomas from the Reality Czars podcast. But we always begin our show with one of our personal experiences or that of our family. And in this case, we're going to share with you one of Philip's experiences. Philip is Stephen's younger brother.
Why don't you start it off, Leslie?
All right. When Philip was 36 years old, we were visiting up north in Sonora. We live further south near Palm Springs, but we'd made the trip up to see the family. And Philip told us about an experience that he'd had the evening before. Philip built a house for himself in a remote woodsy location in Sonora. And the upper deck of his house, the upper story of his house had a deck that he built that ran the entire length of the house. And, but it was up high, so he had a lovely view from it. And he said that he had been experiencing visitations from these orbs, these silvery spheres that were about the size of a grapefruit, that were, what they would do is move up and down his deck, almost like it was peering in his various windows and watching him. And he said this for a few weeks that he'd been plagued by them. And they didn't come every single night, but they came very frequently, he said.
Shall I take over from there?
All right, dear.
Okay. Yes, he definitely, and my brother was a very no-nonsense kind of guy. He taught calculus for fun. He was very level-headed. So anyways, one of these nights, in the middle of the night, he decided to confront one of these orbs. And he went outside on his deck, and he kind of stared it down, was looking at it, and this orb, he said that it rushed him, and it went through the upper right side of his chest, through the pectoral muscles, and then out through the trapezius. And we just happened to have been visiting at the time, and this is in 2003 again. And we looked at his back, and he literally had like about a grapefruit or a small grapefruit size red welt.
Like a
circular.
Yeah, it looked like a bruise.
A bruise, okay.
With some stippling in it, like bruises get.
And then after that, then we also asked him about other things, because I remembered things from our childhood, and he told me of things that had happened to him that he couldn't explain.
Yeah, this was a time when we decided to try and get as much information out of the family as we could.
Yeah.
They were a reticent bunch, a very psychic family, but they didn't brag about their UFO encounters or their alien encounters. They were very secretive about them, and it took a little bit of prying to get them out of.
Yeah, it's something you don't just share with people, with most people.
Yeah,
it's becoming a little bit more common now with experiencers groups and that kind of stuff. But back in the time, it was like, okay, you just don't talk about it really amongst yourselves. You can when it comes up.
And he told me that when he went out to confront it, that he'd had a couple of beers, and that we think that gave him some Dutch courage to finally face off against this.
You see, that's a very good
intruder,
point. That's a good point.
Yeah.
When you keep on seeing something that you cannot explain, when you haven't had a couple of drinks, sometimes it takes a couple of drinks for you to be able to actually say, okay, I'm going to find out.
I think he just kind of had enough of
Yes.
he was cowering in his house when these things were outside. He wouldn't go outside.
And another quick point is that this is a house that primarily my brother and my dad built. I had very little to do with that particular project.
Yeah,
but
the whole family were builders.
This was not like, say, like a haunted house or anything like that. This was a brand new house. My brother was the original occupant. So.
Yeah, it was. They definitely were suffering from the alien abduction phenomenon and not a haunting per se.
Oh yeah, one more last thing we're going to talk about too. This real quick is that we had some guests on a few months ago, and that have lived up in Sonora for decades and have done a lot of research. And apparently, it turns out that Sonora, California, is one of the most visited areas in the whole United States.
Yeah, one of the
by
top
UFOs.
Yeah, one of the top UFO hotspots in the country.
Yep, research it.
All right, well, that's our personal experience, and we'll take a short break here and then introduce our guest. Bye.
Bye.
Welcome back, everyone, and we're here to introduce our wonderful guests for the night. We have with us today Nate and Thomas. They are the hosts of the Reality Czars podcast. Nate is the anti-government extremist and a big enthusiast of Bigfoot and cryptid lore. And he describes himself as a Christ follower, bringing a unique perspective to the mix. Thomas is a lifelong conspiracy theorist. He is an U.S. Air Force veteran, a former Disney digital animator, a professional musician, and has been publishing comics since 2012. The podcast delves into conspiracies, cryptid sightings, the occult, and paranormal events. While it tackles serious and often bizarre subjects, the hosts bring a comedic and lighthearted approach to their discussions. This combination of humor and intrigue has garnered a following among those who enjoy exploring alternative viewpoints and unconventional topics with a bit of levity. So welcome, Nate and Thomas. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having us on.
Hello, guys.
It's funny, Stephen is a professional musician as well, and I went to animation college.
And graduated. Hey.
Yeah, so we have that in common. That's funny.
Yeah, I couldn't decide which route I wanted to go. I kept jumping from one to the other over and over again. But I ended up sticking with animation a little bit longer.
Yeah, it is fun. It's a challenge. And
working with other animators, but also you tend to get much better, more professional opportunities. Being a professional musician almost feels like, even if you get to the heights, it never, to me, felt like a profession. It was just, you're just always partying and just dealing with people that don't like to go to sleep before like 7 a.m. That was my entire experience.
Yeah, well, we call Stephen a professional because he's actually been paid for it a few times, and he was with the orchestra here in the Joshua Tree Philharmonic Orchestra.
Yeah, I'm not one of these guys that that say, my juices get going at 2 a.m. Okay, my juices. I'm the Victor Borges style type of guy. Victor Borges really influenced me. He said, "Listen, if you practice not until you get it right, but till you can't get it wrong." Okay, he says so. He would get up at any time of the day and sit down and play a piece, and if he could play it near perfect, whether he was drunk, hungover, whether he was sleepy,
tired.
Okay,
yeah.
that means guess what? You actually got it.
It's ready now.
Okay, yeah. So I'm working on Alvarado del Grazioso by Ravel, and a bunch of my own pieces that we're going to put as the ending of our show. But it's like, I'm serious about the accordion and the piano, and I used to be about other instruments too, but
What's your instrument, Thomas?
I was classically trained on piano since I was like 3 or 4, but over time that drifted into synthesizers and samplers and all the cool like tech stuff.
Right.
So my weapon of choice now would be like an Akai MPC, which is kind of like a drum machine, but it's a sampler, and now it's got synths built in. It's kind of an one in a all wrecking machine. It can do a little bit of everything.
A little of
Now
everything.
you make awesome music about the Bach Saga.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. I like to use my gift to make music about conspiracy theories and occult topics that you don't tend to hear songs about as often.
Yeah, Steve, we have an outro that for our show that Steven plays, and he composed it himself. And it definitely has a spooky feel to it, like
Yeah, I made it on purpose, but I'm going to get some of my accordion stuff in there, and I've got like 4 pieces I'm working on right now. We're going to like start switching them out.
Yeah.
But, I've still really, my main thing still is the acoustic. I still like the acoustic sound and the feel. It just works better for me. That's
although
about it.
he does compose on an electric piano with the synthesizer.
Synth. I do some of that too. Yeah.
So I'm really excited that we have a Bigfoot enthusiast too. Nate. I don't know if you remember that. Our theory is that the people flying UFOs in our skies are actually a branch of humanity that split away thousands of years ago. And we think they live and are launching their UFOs from their underground bases and underground cities.
Right.
And so we believe that they utilized Bigfoot as sentries and that, they're working together, in other words. And I'm kind of trying to research that idea to see if it pans out. But have you heard much about any sightings of Bigfoot that also correspond to UFO sightings as well?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they've always sort of been, well, not always, but yeah, they've definitely been tied together. And recently, yeah, there's definitely been Bigfoot sightings that have corresponded with UFO sightings. And we actually sort of have a little theory that other people have had in the past too, that a lot of this phenomenon are all kind of tied together, and that it may actually be one phenomenon, that like these different UFOs and different aliens and things, they appear to you. It might be one creature that appears to you with what you are, I guess, maybe mentally capable of handling, and or maybe what you would maybe what you would want to see as well if you're there searching for something like this. Like someone that is from the Christian perspective might encounter a demonic entity or maybe an angelic entity, while someone else might see a UFO or someone else might see Bigfoot. And I think this is also kind of tied together with some of the poltergeist and ghost experiences too, that some of these are really similar. This, I guess you just call it a phenomenon, whatever it is.
We agree. In fact, that's the name of our show is, Abductions 101, UFOs and the Paranormal Connection. And the connection being, we think the whole cryptid phenomenon in all of these weird cryptids that people are seeing can be tied to, we call them cousins. We don't call them aliens in our household,
A common generational point
of
origin.
We think they might, in fact, be creating them as like worker species. Like, we think the Nordics are in charge because they're the ones that met with Byrd and they met with Eisenhower. But we think that they utilize genetic engineering just like we would use any tool. And if let's say they want a bunch of underwater work done, they wouldn't put scuba gear on themselves and do it. They would create like a race that could breathe underwater and then do the work
Mermaids,
for them.
I like it.
Yeah,
in fact,
reptiloids, or
in fact, didn't
whatever.
you say, Leslie, that about 52% of the abductions, of the 52% of people say that they see Nordics?
Yes, it's actually a lot of times people think grays are the most commonly seen alien, but that actually is not the case. They're the second most seen. The most seen are the Nordics, 52%. And I forget the exact breakdown of the rest of it, but insectoids being the rarest, but and then reptiloids, and then tall grays, and then little grays, and then the Nordics.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff too. And there is some sort of like psychic connection with all this too. And I don't know if they're doing it technologically or if they just have maybe just higher. they might have actual like psychic abilities that kind of mask themselves and kind of I don't know if like glimmer is the right word, but they kind of like Thomas, help me out here. What they kind of
Shimmer.
Yeah.
Yeah, they mask themselves, and they can appear to you in lots of different ways. And I think that's actually what people are encountering when they encounter a Bigfoot.
We fully
It could just be
agree
very
with
heavy
the-
suggestion, right? It could just be such a strong suggestion that it turns into what you would consider like a vampire glimmer.
Yeah, like Stephen's family,
Right.
frequently the family would see something with a shimmery quality to it. And I began to realize that this is probably signs of memory tampering. Because sometimes the family would see them as, let me back up. His brother Philip saw a tall gray alien standing in his room and one time. And so that's when we realized who we're dealing with in our family. But sometimes the boys, when they were young, they saw them as garden gnomes, but they remember the memory as shimmery, like it sparkled and twinkled. And one time his mother saw them like a UFO come through the ceiling and land, and it opened up and Chinese people jumped out of it. She remembered them as looking like they were Chinese people in Chinese costumes. But again, the memories were shimmery. And so we don't believe in garden gnomes per se, but we do believe that the aliens are tampering after the abductions. They're tampering with people's memories.
What I found with studying the brain for decades is that it's the level of acceptability and processing of between the cerebrum, the cerebellum, the neocortex, and especially the parahippocampal gyrus. These areas, when they get developed a certain area, there's also your acceptance. Luckily, I did not grow up in a religious family. I grew up kind of a-religious, so I didn't have a lot of, Christianity or Catholicism on top of, my belief system. So I kind of saw things the way they were. And my brother saw the same stuff that I saw when he turned the same age, when I saw the garden gnomes. And actually, to remind your audience or whatever, our audience, that my brother actually slept in the closet from the age of 6 to 8, at least.
Yeah.
Because, and I asked my brother Philip, I said, Philip, why are you sleeping in the closet? He said, well, I'm afraid of the little men who come at night. And, we didn't have a TV set in our room. This is like, this is like the early 70s. Okay, so it wasn't any influence like that. And you just don't talk about it, with your friends at school. They think you're either lying or you're crazy or that you're living in a haunted house, it was none of the above. But my mom was an automatic writer, just like all the women in the family for 4 generations.
And Nate, I wanted to ask, have you ever had a Bigfoot encounter of your own?
We've actually filmed a Bigfoot documentary, searching for him. And as close as we got was a very strong psychic connection with a Bigfoot. Me and everyone who was there were receiving the same messages. Kind of like we were just like southeast of Mount Hood, and we were out in the middle of nowhere, and we were like deep in the middle of the woods, and we kind of had this feeling that if we had gone down this valley, we were going to run into some like women and children Bigfoot, and we had like a strong male, I guess, presence say, "Get the hell out of there!" I'm going to protect my family. You guys aren't welcome here. Get lost, or I'm going to do something to you. And so we very respectfully said, "Okay, we are just here to say hi. We're going to turn around and go this way now." But we never laid eyes on Bigfoot.
I believe in that psychic connection, though. We heard just recently one of our podcast guests. He was a podcaster too, and he had a guest on who said that she was a psychic, and she got a psychic message from Bigfoot that he was injured and needed help. And so she got 2 guys to go with her out into the forest. And slowly the psychic message kind of switched to where I'm not really injured. I'm going to capture you. And she said, uh-oh, and she told her two guy friends, and they all three of them ran the heck out of the forest as fast as they could. And they heard something running behind them, big thudding footprints running behind them. And they all jumped in their car, the truck they had, and buzzed off as quick as they could. But I've heard of more than once of people having a psychic connection with Bigfoot.
It's one of those fascinating things where, because I'm curious if they were actually communicating with a Bigfoot. I've had a few guests on that have described their connections with them, and typically it's been all positive experiences with Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
But with them as well, they said that they have, and this person has laid eyes on them. There's dogmen as well that are with Bigfoot. They're almost like their guard dogs. They're like their protector kind of thing. That's their servant. And Dogman was very aggressive. Dogman was, I guess, more beast than man, I guess you'd say. And but he has also told me that there were several types of Bigfoots. I wonder where she was at, because like down near like Florida and like Louisiana area, he says that there is like a red-haired Bigfoot that are more aggressive and more, he calls them man-eaters. And maybe that kind of sounds like, I think the Bigfoot that we have out here in the Pacific Northwest he's kind of a gentle giant. And hopefully he's not going to try to trick me into nursing his wounds only to eat me.
I'm not really sure where this took place. I'll have to listen to the episode again to see if she gave us a location on that. But yeah, it was Bigfoot. In my reading, it seems like they become more aggressive when they're actually protecting their territory. When they wander out into other territories, they're more docile and more elusive and secretive. But when they feel the territory is threatened, that's when they start throwing rocks and, and boulders at people,
Remember that really nice couple, the Athabascan couple we met on July 4th of last year? He's met Bigfoot, according to him, Native American guy in Arizona.
Arizona, right? 3
different times. The most recent time was he was on a 15-hand horse. And so Bigfoot was like, just like looking at him, just, they were like within maybe 8 or 10 feet, and they were just like eye to eye. So the Bigfoot was like 8 or 9 feet tall. And he said, it's funny because the Native Americans don't view them in the same way that Caucasians or, most people do. They see them as being, the men of the mountains, that kind of stuff. Also, the other interesting thing, real quick, and this is your show, so, but real quick, is that there is a formula. The further north you go, the bigger the animal gets. Whether it be a Bigfoot or a polar bear, it's because you retain heat better that way. So the Bigfoot feet that have been, reported in the Himalayas and Alaska tend to be taller than the ones in, let's say, for instance, Australia.
Or the South.
Right,
yeah.
Correct.
And the Alaskan one, remember, I'm trying to think of the name, but it was in Alaska. They set up a fishery town in the early 1900s.
1920s, right.
And I think it was Bigfoot. It was prime fishing area, right? And I think that they were encroaching. The Native Americans
I think they were gold mining as well, weren't they? And I think it was the gold miners that were attacked.
It was the
There
fisheries.
were 2 different ones.
This was the fishing. It started with a C. I can't remember the name of it now.
It was on a bay, a really nice kind of covey type bay. This was a different thing. The gold miners, that was a whole different thing. That was a cabin attack.
And this one, the Bigfoots actually attacked and tore their victims, to pieces essentially, and it scared the people away. But I think what had happened is the Native Americans in that region, they were saying that this was Bigfoot country and they shouldn't put a town there. And of course, white people ignore that kind of thing, right? They ignored it, and but they didn't ignore it for long. After a few deaths, they took themselves away and were smart, to leave. And I think it's because they had encroached onto Bigfoot's hunting grounds for where he was catching fish.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
Have you ever heard of that Lake Rupkund in India?
No, I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, this is another thing where I think there's a connection between the UFOs and the aliens and the
Bigfoot.
Sasquatch.
Mm-hmm.
Except there, of course, it's the Yeti. And on the border of Tibet and India, it's in India, but right near the border and on the slopes of Mount Kailash. And now Mount Kailash is supposed to be one of the mountains where there's an underground city.
It's at 14,000-foot elevation.
Shangri-La. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And so this lake is on the slopes of Mount Kailash, and it's above the tree line, and this lake is full of skeletons, and a lot of these skeletons have their heads bashed in, like from above.
Yeah.
And people thought, well, maybe there was a battle here and they just threw the losers in the lake, because there's like 1,000 skeletons in there.
They're humanoid skeletons.
Yeah, they're all human, but then they started DNA testing them, and they found that it spans like 1,000 years, and the skeletons, and they're all different races too. So what it makes me think is that the Yeti in the area that are protecting the entrances to Mount Kailash and the city of Shangri-La, I think whenever an exploring party gets too close, they bash them on the head and throw them in the lake.
Yeah, these skeletons from Ireland, Scotland, from just
all different races.
Greeks too, and yeah, that was really fascinating. I do exactly know what you're talking about now. Now that you reminded me of that, yeah, they found tons and tons of like soldiers and different types of folks.
Right.
Yeah, just in the water, and yeah, like you said, it spans like hundreds and hundreds of years. Just it's fascinating. Yeah, whatever was happening there. It makes me think too. I don't give too much credit to our government. I'm kind of like I said, an anti-government extremist a little bit, but I do think about like all of the land that is kind of protected, and different things. So this was about 5 years ago. I was with my wife. We took this was our honeymoon, and so we had gone backpacking from the Oregon coast all the way through Washington and into Idaho and into Montana and Wyoming. And one specific place that we were at, this place was called Elk Island. We were on like a little river cruise, and we were heading to this place called Elk Island to have dinner there. And the park ranger was telling me the story that every single one of their animals is like tagged. And so they know the second that heart stops beating. Like, so he says they have all their deers tagged, the mountain lions, bears, everything tagged. And she was saying like a couple years ago, somebody had hit a deer and they knew the second that deer died. And so they went and they closed all the exits and all the entrances, and they went through all the different parking lots, and they found the car that had the blood on it and the fur. And she says that every single time one of those animals gets hit, it comes with like a $10,000 fine. So like, and they were saying so much, like someone was saying like, well, what if a bear attacks my wife and I shoot it? They're like, well, that's fine, but you're still going to have to pay $10,000, so you kind of have to think, how much is my spouse worth,
Do I love my wife that much?
Wow. Wow.
But,
that's something.
But it
like
had
a payment plan, you think?
Yeah, I hope so. But it had my conspiracy brain like thinking about it, and it kind of had me thinking about the idea that like so much of this like what is it, Thomas? It's almost like a quarter of the country you can't live on. The government has like cordoned off like huge chunks. I think of like 3/4 of New Mexico, things like that. They just take, and it's just federal land. It does make me think there might be like not safaris with big open zoos of maybe like Bigfoots and different property, and they have them all tagged, and they just have them like maybe federally protected, or maybe that is something like if they were to build on that land, Bigfoot, like that is their territory, and maybe they would fight back, you know.
At BLM, exactly.
Yeah,
Like-
the
That's
BLM
alive
land.
and well.
I think I've been reading up on Bigfoot, trying to make this UFO Bigfoot connection for possibly a second book, you know, that we want to write. But one of the things I remembered is that, sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. Oh, yes, there was a fire, a forest fire, and firefighters discovered the corpse of a Bigfoot.
Well, it wasn't dead, apparently, according to the story.
Or a dying Bigfoot or something like that. And the government came in and, of course, seized it and forced everybody into silence, you know, by threats.
NDAs, yeah.
Like usual, you know.
Yeah.
They definitely are hiding an enormous amount of stuff from us. And, you know, because we know the government became aware of UFOs. The first crash that we know of in the U.S. was not Roswell. It was in 1941 in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. And unlike Roswell, it didn't get leaked to the media and become a media circus. They just gathered up the craft and the dead bodies and shipped it off to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Because this was before Area 51 was set up. That happened after Roswell. Because the Roswell crash and bodies were also shipped to Wright-Patterson at the time.
At the time.
And
Right, yeah.
So we know, I mean, we don't know when they became aware of these
Our cousins.
living under our feet. But we know it had to have been by then. You know, it couldn't have been. And of course Roswell, they knew it very well by then too, you know. And
I just wanted to segue real quick about the last time that I worked on the military base, 29 Palms, over here in California, back in 2012 actually. That if you picked up a California desert tortoise, moved it off of the highway when you're on the base so it wouldn't get run over, and they caught you doing it, it'd be a $30,000 fine and 3 years in a military prison.
they take it serious.
so the thing is, like, exactly for that, what you're supposed to do, you're supposed to somehow get a signal on your phone or block it off and let the herpetologist come out there and move the friggin' turtle.
Yeah.
I'm me being a turtle guy, I'm a big lover of turtles. It's like, first thing I would do is I'd just, pick it up, 2 inches off the ground so it doesn't pee, and move it off to the side.
Yeah, that's the trouble. When they become frightened, they expel all the water in their bodies, and if there's not a ready water source nearby, it could be their death sentence.
Yeah.
So that's the reason that came into play.
Right.
But, I wanted to ask, Thomas, you were it was Thomas, right? You were the veteran. Did I get that wrong? You served in the Air Force. In what capacity? Where and when?
I was basically worked out at Security Hill, which is right outside of Lackland Air Force Base. And I was a 3CO, which is basically chair force, just doing like top secret computer ops. So yeah, I spent most of my career there, between there and in Biloxi.
And what state is that in? What region?
It was in Texas for a large portion of that.
Oh, Biloxi, of course, I should have known. Right.
Biloxi Blues.
Texas, yeah. So, did you experience any UFO activity around your base?
We had so much air traffic from just regular Boeing, and there was a huge Boeing airport. So if there was, I wasn't paying close enough attention to the rest of that because there was always air traffic. But I'm actually a little bit of a unicorn in that I don't think I've had any sort of paranormal experience. I love hearing other people's, but no aliens, no Bigfoot, no ghosts, none of it.
I was like you until age 45. Stephen had already had 3 UFOs by then, And years
Leave
and
some
years
for the
of
rest of us,
abduction and
man.
sensing. I'm sorry, what?
So he needs to leave some for the rest of us.
Right, like
Yeah,
I've
share,
I've never gone skydiving, but I know it exists. So.
But I really I was getting jealous, because he'd had all these experiences and I had never had anything. And then finally there it was. I saw my first. And then your first UFO is always, mind bending. It was just a white light in the sky, which could be many different things. But then it took off at 20,000 miles an hour and was gone over the northern horizon.
Yeah, we both saw that one.
know.
We both saw that one together.
Yeah, and so it can't be anything else if it moves like that. And then it didn't even ramp up to that speed slowly at all. It just was instantly going at 20,000 miles. I mean, I'm guessing, of course.
It wasn't, again, since people say, "Oh, it was a laser in the clouds." No,
No.
this is 2005. It wasn't
bona
a
fide,
drone.
no.
No, this was a very observable event that we both saw over a period of, a couple of minutes, actually.
So there's hope, Thomas, and you still might see one someday. Keep your eye on the sky.
on that military point too, I always wonder, and I guess maybe just my view of the military, but with Bigfoot being out there, it seems like there's a very high chance that he's also been weaponized by the military, because that's kind of what we're so good at. So when we talk about like the Men in Black or all these other operations, I almost would assume that Bigfoot is involved in that. Like they got Bigfoot on the payroll. He helps with some of those operations.
I would be very surprised if we didn't. Whether the Russians or the Chinese or us or whatever. I mean, obviously, if, it's always, you come up, we know that for a fact, that you come up with a new technology. How can you weaponize it? How can you make money off of it?
Yeah.
How can you make yourself stronger? Or, it's always the same. It's kind of pathetic in a way, really.
And the Mount Shasta thing, where the mythology around it is that the Lemurians moved into Mount Shasta, inside Mount Shasta. And our theory is, as you recall, has to do with the Great Flood really happening, and they finally found the cause of all the flood myths and the extinction events of 13,000 years ago. The Younger Dryas comet has been confirmed to have hit the Lake Superior area 12,850 years ago.
Right.
And that's what happened to the Clovis people and the mammoth and the mastodon. And, they were essentially wiped out. A lot of other animals, too, the dire wolf and the saber-toothed cat, they all die out about the same time period. And
Right.
Now we know why. We know what happened. And we think that they moved. Lemuria was supposed to be a continent in the Pacific, and it was not high ground. It was like a fairly low ground, and so any major tsunami event, of course, was likely to destroy it. And all these flood myths start with like a warning.
Right.
So we think someone on this rock that we call a planet 13,000 years ago spotted this comet coming and had advanced enough astronomy skills to, know that it was going to hit.
To give forewarning and foreknowledge, and
then they warned the whole world.
Right.
And we think that's when a lot of the separation of our races occurred, right? And so the Lemurians are supposed to have moved into Mount Shasta. And I make a point in our documentary that an extinct volcano is a particularly good place to move a population quickly to survive a tsunami. Because, it has this throat that goes all the way down to the mantle almost. And it has lava tubes that sometimes open up into giant chambers, magma domes and magma chambers inside. So that have then since emptied of magma and they're big.
So in other
open,
words, they could be retrofitted fairly easily.
It's almost like it's a pre-existing bomb shelter and it's above the tsunami line too. So that's one thing you don't want to go underground in low ground, because after a tsunami you could have a lake on top of you, or a small sea.
Right.
But in a volcano, you're relatively safe, and I think that's why we have so many of these joint military alien bases that MUFON knows about are in mountains or in extinct volcanoes.
Right.
And
Well,
I think the Lemurians are like Bigfoot wranglers, because I think they send them out for various sentry duty or perhaps foraging duty or information gathering. And I think they're working together. And that's why we can never capture a Bigfoot. I think they have them tagged, like you were saying. And if one dies, they instantly know it and they go get the body quick, before we can find it,
You mentioned that concept of getting advance notice, or like someone letting them know that some kind of a tragedy is coming. And there's a really fascinating concept by John C. Lilly, which I think he dubbed it Echo, which was the Earth Coincidence Control Office that famously got adopted into like a video game, Echo the Dolphin. But that's what Echo originally meant. And Echo were these group of sentient beings. Some say that they're dolphins. Sometimes it's the CIA. It could be Bigfoot. It could be anything. But that there's this organization that does let the rest of the world know when something big is about to happen. And their arch nemesis is essentially solid state technology, or they call SSI, solid state intelligence. And that for longer than we've been around, this has been going on. There's been like this power of light and dark fighting each other, where one side is giving the rest of the world advance notice, and the other side is essentially AI that's slowly encroaching on all that.
Interesting.
Yeah, no, that really is. Now, when we come back from our quick break here, let's dive down deeper into that, okay?
Yes, so we'll be back in just a few moments. Hi, I'm Leslie Shaw, and I'm here to tell you about the incident that happened. My husband and I got married on my birthday, so we were celebrating both my birthday and our anniversary camping at Whitewater Campground. And the bank called me and said, "Are you spending all your money in a Texas Walmart right now?" And it's like, "Oh, no, we are not." And they had drained everything out of our account but 86 cents. That's all we had. And at the time, that was our only bank account. And so we were kind of stuck. And fortunately, the bank was great. And they said that they would refund it, our money, between 5 and 9 business days later. So I was trying to figure out what to feed us for that time period. So I remember opening the pantry going, what am I going to make? And then I'm a stained glass artist, and I had several pieces in a gallery at the time, and one of them sold, and we just got lucky. And I remember it was almost $300, and we were able to go grocery shopping with it, and at least feed us for the week it took. And the bank was great. It only took the 5 days, and we didn't have to wait the whole 9. But I would rather it didn't have to happen at all. And we're back. Thanks for hanging, you guys.
Yeah, the concept of duality is really interesting. It's been explored so many times, and it seems to kind of define the way the human mind works. You got the left and the right hemisphere of the brain, and one's more mathematical, and one is more musical. And the way memories are laid down. It's fascinating that that we can be manipulated very easily, but the brain is developing as we are, getting more data. Literally, we're getting exposed to data faster at an earlier age. But the problem that I see with that is that if you're getting what we're doing right now, on a computer at 40 cycles per second, at 2 years of age, it literally causes the brain to be able to only think in sound bites instead of basically encoding and laying down memories using emotion, like we grew up reading books. How many people read books anymore? I mean, it's a little scary.
Steven's an advocate for not putting children in front of TVs at
Yes.
too young of an age, for
big time.
So is like
babysitters,
Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and all of the tech leaders. They share that in common, almost ubiquitously. They famously don't let their kids use the technology that they themselves develop and put out into the world.
They're too young. Their brains aren't developed enough.
That's wise. I know a lot of people that just put their kids, that's like a babysitter. They just plop them down in front of the TV and they go about their business, But Steve, you don't think it's good for them, right?
It's not good for them at all.
Yeah.
No,
health,
in fact,
yeah.
if you're gonna encode information, it's better off for you to actually pick up a book and read it at a slower pace. Because if you try and read the same information off of a computer screen, you don't retain it, and it doesn't have any emotional impact. It doesn't have any tactile impact because you're not. There's all these different systems that are involved with actually for human brains. They're not designed to be in front of a computer at 1 year of age. They're just not.
It's like it being in an alpha state versus a different kind of state.
You're in about 11 to 14 brainwave cycles per second when you're reading a book versus 30 to 40 when you're watching TV or reading off a computer screen. It scrambles the encoding system. It just does.
I wonder if that's the cause for so much anxiety in the world today.
You bet it is.
In the youth, COVID didn't help either. I think
One of the scary things that I saw when I was at Disney, they would do a lot of kind of product testing where they would just go into the park and pick out a family. Hey, do you guys want to check out this new product we're working on? And one of those, they gave these kids a book. And the idea was that they would open up the book, read the book, get some sort of information, and then apply that in an interactive activity and to see how well they could correlate information from one medium to the other medium. And there were more than just a handful of kids that when given this book, they were swiping the cover of it, expecting the page to turn because they had grown up with an iPad and all they ever knew was that, oh, I'm reading something. Let me just swipe to get to the next thing.
Swipe right.
And these kids were swiping a physical book in front of them, expecting it to just do the magic thing.
Right. I know.
Oh my God. The what's a book thing,
And every kid should learn Tai Chi. Every kid should learn Tai Chi.
Yeah.
It's my opinion. Having done it and taught it for so many years, it basically makes people more human. It makes them less violent. It makes them be able to focus and concentrate better. It's just, being almost 65 now, I know these things and haven't been in the military for 6 years. Been a cabinet maker, been a musician. I'm lucky that I've had these abilities, luckily.
I think it helped him cope with the trauma of being an abduction victim.
Oh, yeah. My brother didn't cope with it, but I did.
Yeah, he coped with it a lot better than his brother did, that's for sure. I wanted to ask, Nate, do you have any theories on the origin of Bigfoot? Because I have a lot of theories, but I was wondering if you had any.
Yeah, so we have a few theories, actually, and we're working on a little comic that's going to describe a lot of these theories. So there is an idea of like a biblical Bigfoot, like the idea of Esau in the Bible being kind of, when Abraham was going to pass down the blessing, right? Esau was described as hairy and smelly, and he was described as like a hunter and kind of a wild man. Yeah. And so it's kind of this, and it might be a parable, and it's like this idea of like humanity splitting in two different directions, right? There was his brother and there was Esau, and his brother got the blessing from Abraham, but it was in the way that it's described in the Bible. He had to trick his father into blessing him. He had to disguise himself, and so he had to put on sheepskin, because he was trying to pretend that he was as hairy as his brother was. And so his father came down there and felt him and goes, okay, you feel like your brother. And then he had to wear some of his like smelly clothes. He's like, all right, well, you smell like your brother, And so it almost to me is this idea of like humanity splitting in two different directions. We went this way, they went that way. But I mean, there's also the ideas too of like, Thomas, who are those people that came down from outer space? Supposedly,
Anunnaki.
The
Yeah, the
Anunnaki.
Nephilim.
Yeah, well, yes, and I think that those are very, very much connected. So, like something like the Anunnaki, they came down here and they were supposedly mining for gold, and they had built or they had brought with them like a race of people that they ended up using as slaves for like slave labor to mine the gold, and there was a big revolt, and so then they said, all right, all right, all right. Well, there's these humanoids that are over here, and we are going to play around with their DNA a little bit, and they're going to be our new slave race, right? And so that's kind of supposedly how humanity came about, and it would kind of stand. It kind of makes sense because we're definitely of Earth, but we're different from any other creature, any other animal on the planet, right? Like the way we can communicate, the way we walk around, the way, we create things to enslave ourselves and do all these terrible, stupid things that we do. But it is interesting. And so my idea also is maybe Bigfoot was the original hominid that was living here. That is kind of our cousin. The more they were intelligent. They're basically our cousins. They're some sort of like sentient ape-like creatures, sort of like us.
fully agree with what you're saying, and that parallels our theory as well. The according to Sitchin's books and his translation of the tablets, the Anunnaki first came here 450,000 years ago.
Yeah,
and they brought their own kind as laborers, mine workers. And you're right, after 150,000 years, they got sick of it and they revolted. And supposedly that's when they started looking around for a worker that they could create. And I think that they were tossing around, they took Homo erectus and uplifted Homo erectus into Homo sapien. And then over the next 50,000 years, kind of improved the model into Homo sapiens sapien.
Right.
But at the same time, this is 300,000 years ago now, at the exact same time, we had Gigantopithecus and
Australopithecus robustus.
Yes, thank you. They were also living on the planet at the same time. And I don't see why the Anunnaki wouldn't toy with possibly making them into the slave worker race as well, and modifying their DNA until they created a Bigfoot. Now, with us, they created, there's actually a cut and paste job on our genome that backs up this theory.
The neocortex, yes.
In the speech centers, where we think that they were actually given speech and also the ability to imagine. It's an enormous jump from Homo erectus to Homo sapien in intelligence, the ability to think abstractly.
Right.
And, Homo erectus was still drinking water with a cupped hand, whereas the analogy I make is that Homo sapien makes cups and sits in a chair, to drink his water and pours it from a pitcher, it's because of the creative abilities we had to create, make stuff. But I don't see why they couldn't have also been saying, well, what if we want a really strong worker? Let's create these other creatures too, these Bigfoots, and like, why not?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we are just, maybe the softer version. Like, we're the house slaves. You know what I mean?
Right.
We're gentle.
The gardeners,
we don't have the hair. Yeah, we can't stand the blistering heat. Yeah, we're strong, but we're more thinkers, right? Yeah, and so and I mean, there could have been a ton of different like chimeric experiments that they did, and so we are
the
maybe.
tablets show that they show like people's heads on lion bodies and dog bodies, and all kinds of like. Implying that they were fooling around with genetic manipulation.
Just like you're saying, that you've been saying there, that this. You look at 50 years ago compared to what we're thinking about, like even CRISPR technology wasn't even really in our wheelhouse 50 years ago, and what we're doing now, fooling around with literally, this even 10 years ago, that we think it was the first thing. A company called Denali, which is kind of funny, named after the the former Mount McKinley in Alaska, they were the first ones to come up with the ability to take care of and reverse certain types of blindness by finding out they say, okay, this is the part of the gene sequence of the DNA sequence that is corrupt, and we'll just cut and paste it and put in the correct one, and basically reversing, not completely in all cases, but in many cases reversing and giving people back sight. And it's
really wonderful. We saw a program on it recently where they have cured sickle cell anemia.
Yeah.
All they have to do is splice out the gene with another gene, and then the body starts replicating correct genes after that.
Right.
And of course, it might be an expensive process to do it to everyone who suffers from the condition, but
it's like taking out a corrupted file and replacing it with a non-corrupt file, and then the body takes over from there. And the body replicates about 97% every 365 days anyway. People don't realize that you have a new liver every 3.5 to 4 months. So it's like we're always we're changing out everything apart from our teeth, unfortunately. But they might figure that out pretty soon.
And lungs, right?
Well, no, the lungs replicate, but the problem is when you already have things like COPD and you have tuberculosis, it replicates the same tissue unless you can change it out in the DNA, and then it will replicate new tissue. So we haven't gotten to that point yet. Okay. Anyway, sorry.
Don't be sorry, my dear. So, Thomas, you said you didn't have any experiences, but how about you, Nate? Did you have any other paranormal experiences that got you interested in the field?
Well, I've always had a fascination, and I grew up listening to the stories. I grew up in kind of a weird, secluded place called Humboldt County.
Northern Cal.
Northern Cal, yeah, out in the woods there. And when I was a young man, I used to go and hang out with pot growers out in the hills in southern Humboldt County, and I would hear stories from some of the guys out there that have been living out in the like mountains in Garberville and that area, Mendocino, and Bigfoot was just a given to them. They had seen him, they had experienced him. They said Bigfoot smokes pot, and they said Bigfoot's just an interesting guy out there. He's just like a man of the woods, almost like a forest spirit out there. And so I would always hear these stories, and I was always out there looking for him. Again, I haven't seen Bigfoot yet, but I know I will. The only other actual like paranormal experience, besides, I guess you could call this paranormal. I guess when I was young, I definitely had a lot of Christian experiences that I consider borderline magical, mystical. I've seen like what people would call miracles happen in front of me, and I think there's definitely things that I would call that paranormal. That's paranormal.
Yes, please tell.
How old were you, by the way, when these things happened? Roughly,
I must have been around like 5 or 6. Like my mom was always dragging me. I grew up Pentecostal. My mom was dragging me to like tent revivals and different mega churches or whatever kind of churches, weird churches, ones there was like 10 people at in the middle of nowhere. And we would see things like manifestation of like gold dust appearing on your hands and weird things like that. But the one that I thought was the most crazy is this woman came in with one malformed arm, and her arm was about like at least 6 to 8 inches shorter than the other. And everyone laid hands on her, including me. And we all sat there and prayed and just pulled her arm out. And her arm, she and it was like, like stick thin. Definitely. It was, I don't know how to explain it besides that she had a normal arm after laying hands on her and praying for her. And that one blew my mind.
Yeah.
And so you can accredit that to whatever you want. I give Jesus the credit for that, but some people might say even the psychic, power of the mind and just having enough faith and believing you can manifest reality. And if we are in some sort of simulation, maybe there's like cheat codes. And if you, I don't know exactly how it works, but her arm appeared.
That's wonderful.
That's
Wow.
a wild one. And but I was going to say, your UFO experience sounded exactly like mine.
Yeah?
This was in 2020. We were in the Painted Hills near Mitchell, Oregon, which is again in the middle of absolute nowhere. I think Mitchell has like 10 people that live in it. This tiny little. And I think we were almost like 100 miles from like actual civilization, and we were like actually on the Painted Hill. I think we were camping illegally, and we were at least at least 20 miles from the nearest person, and we saw this light come, and it was bright white, and it was a clear sky. There was no clouds. It wasn't a laser pointer, and this thing just popped right up. And we felt a bizarre like presence. To me, it felt menacing, and it was this kind of presence, like I'm watching you. And people might again then say it was a drone, but it was dead silent. There was no sound associated with it, and the way it moved was unnatural. I guess a drone could maybe make some of those movements, but similar to you, when it left so fast that it couldn't have been a man craft, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So I don't
Or
know
if it
how
was
those
manned,
things
they
move.
had some way of canceling gravity, inertia, or whatever, you know.
What time of the year was that again? Roughly?
That was 2020, and it was probably around July. It was in the middle of summer, and we were on the Painted Hills, and it was hot as heck. And it was beautiful out there.
Sounds like a beautiful country, yeah.
It is. It's really gorgeous. It's kind of desert area. It's like in the center of Oregon, and it's real pretty out there.
Okay.
You know, I've read hundreds of reports where people will be driving along, or they're outside standing around, and they'll see a UFO cruising, like, say, you know, across their vision. And then they'll think to themselves, wow, a UFO. And then the UFO stops and starts coming towards them. And this feeling of a presence that you describe, it's there is definitely a psychic connection with the UFO phenomenon, and we now know about it because of that it's been proven. Well, I mean, we've known about it for 20 years because Steve comes from this very psychic family.
Oh,
but,
yeah, 30, 40 years, yeah.
But finally, Luis Elizondo, you know, the guy who released the article to the New York Times with the 3 videos, the famous videos, he has a new book out, and he describes in it that apparently the government did PET scans and MRI scans of the brains of abductees and discovered that they have the same kind of brains that people with ESP have.
And remote viewing.
Confirming that there is definitely a psychic connection to the phenomenon that we, like I say, we've known all along. But it was nice to have somebody finally confirm it, you know, with medical science. You know what I mean?
Right. And you know, your thing about the dusting on the arm, that's really interesting because the dusting phenomena, like we have a friend that practiced body harmony for years, and with people in groups. And one of the common things that would happen in these groups, they get this fine dusting, usually white to gray, that would appear on their arms. And when they got them tested, they were called monoatomic earth elements that are kind of rare. And they also appeared outside the sarcophagus of the
Great Pyramid.
The Great Pyramid.
Yeah, the room around the sarcophagus has got
So-
all this monoatomic earth elements there.
So it lends credence to what you're saying.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. Specifically, they would say that it was gold dust, but I don't know anyone that ever got it tested. They would also, I never saw this, but they would say, like God would give them like a cap tooth. Sometimes they're like replace some of their teeth with jewels and wild things, wild stories that I heard about. Again, I don't think that I have any jewels in my mouth, but wild stuff.
That's funny.
These things do occur, though. They're real. I mean,
Yeah.
like say these, this dusting that occurs when people are doing deep meditation or doing
having
Yeah.
some sort of
spiritual
religion,
type of,
spiritual,
chanting,
yeah.
and these things do occur, and they are monoatomic earth elements.
Now this is the second time we've had a miracle described to us on our show. Another time was it was the two fellows from the Sabbath at Midnight podcast, and I forget what his name was at the moment, but he when he was a child, he this bird got shot by a BB or something like that, and it had
Right.
it fell to the ground and died, and it had a hole in its chest with blood. And he was just a little young boy, and he picked up the bird, and he was kind of crying over it. And his mother, he said, "Mother, what can we do?" And she said, "Well, let's pray." So they sat down and they started praying. And as he's praying, he's watching the bird, and the hole in the chest closes up, and the bird takes off and flies away. And if that isn't a miracle, I don't know what is.
Yeah, it's very heartwarming too. Yeah, that's for sure.
The power of prayer, it's not to be discounted or disbelieved.
Yep.
100%. I mean, I think one human being, there's that saying in the Bible, it says, when two or more are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of them. And again, you can credit to God, the creator, whatever, like source, whatever you want to call it. But there is something that is really powerful when there are two or three or four or many people gathered in one location, and they have one thought, a focused prayer, and they are, I had a friend in high school. He was a jerk. I love him, but he was a jerk. He was just one of these kids that would he'd maybe like steal your food or something. You know what I mean? He was just kind of a jerk. And real kind of, what's the word I'm looking for?
A prankster.
You definitely a prankster. Like, this kid was the embodiment of Loki. He was a real, he was a butthead. And then one time, I remember that he was just acting really nice, and I thought there was something wrong with him. And this was like over some pot too. He like gave me an ounce of pot, and I was like, "Dude, this is not like you." I said, "What the hell's wrong with you?
Oh, no,
why are you giving me your pot, dude?" And I'd found out that, like, basically the doctor had had cancer. He had I think it was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but he got it when he was like 7 years old. And now we were in high school, and he's had cancer this whole time. They had taken one of his lungs out, so he has like one lung. And at this point, they were taking him off of chemo, and they told him, like, "You're dead." Basically, like you have maybe 6 months left. Your whole body's like riddled with cancer. There's nothing we can do. The chemo's making you sicker, so we're just going to take you off of it and enjoy the last 6 months you got.
Yeah, get your affairs in order.
Yeah, just, why are we going to make you sicker? You're already dead at this point, right? And so I remember my mom invited him to church, and he, like, everyone there laid hands on him, and we all sat there and we prayed for him. And we had been taking like trips to San Francisco. We like once a month he had to go down to San Francisco to kind of get a full body checkup to see how it was progressing and things like that. And he was completely 100% healed after that.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave credit to weed. He didn't give credit to Jesus because I'm smoking pot. It is, but it was literally, they had told him, "You're basically dead." He had given me all of his pot. We prayed for him, and the next month when we went down to San Francisco, I'd go with him. He had no trace of cancer, and there is no explanation that I can think of. Medically, the doctors were like, "What the hell?"
Did he ask for his pot back after that?
It was long gone. Long gone. And it's funny now, actually. He's now, as an adult, he found Jesus, and he's a Christian guy. But he wasn't for the longest time, and he was a wild kid, dude. I can't imagine more wild kids. Actually, he was he was one of the worst.
I
In a
had a
fun way.
Jesus experience myself. We were, my father was Jewish and my mother was a Christian Scientist, the ones that won't take their kids to the doctor, that kind of religion. And so, of course, they kind of ignored religion as we were growing up. But then later in life, they tried becoming, I guess, Protestants or something, like to compromise between the two somehow. I don't know. But I grew up basically without religion because of that. And but when I met Stephen, we began doing Buddhist meditation, like Kundalini raising work, with deep meditation and chanting and chakra opening. And after 6 months of doing this, they taught us how to astral project, and I became a regular astral projector. And in the teachings of these people that we were with, they said they believed that Jesus was a Messiah because they believe that God gives us a Messiah every 1,000 years or so. Buddha was, a couple of thousand years ago, and then Christ was, however long ago. And
Muhammad.
And so
Osiris.
that they still believe that he's a Messiah, just not their particular Messiah. They were more into the Buddhism, right? But
now we have Donald Trump as our modern day.
But they did, they didn't discount Jesus as a full conscious, Messiah. And so one of my astral projections, I said to myself, I want to meet Jesus. And with astral projection, when you want to go somewhere, if it's a short trip, it's you get like a black tunnel that just goes whoosh, whoosh, But if you're going a long trip somewhere far away, it's whoosh, 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 whoosh. But to see Jesus, it was a lot of whooshes. It was a long journey. And when I got there, there was this wonderful firmament of stars above, and it seemed like the stars themselves were singing. And I saw in front of me, it looked like how a neon sign is the outline of something, right? It looked like the outline of a man, like in neon. But then it turned and replicated itself, until it looked like a bird cage in the shape of a man.
And the sound of the stars was like this angelic music like you never heard before.
It was just the most beautiful choir music, but like a million voices singing it. And then the view changed to where I was at the bottom of a stairwell that was going up. And at the top of the stairs, a door opened and a man walked through, and he started walking down the stairs. And I felt this incredible permeation of love through every cell that I owned, just a wash with blood, in my blood, in my cells. It was just love, love, love. And at the time, I was a sexually active, woman of middle-aged woman, and I never really felt love without also feeling some sort of a physical attraction, right? So, but the instant I had a physical attraction for the man in front of me, I was flushed like a turd, just flush, whoosh, down back into my body, slam back into my body. So I thought I'd share my Jesus experience because, we are science-based people, and we are more Buddhist than we are anything else, but we're definitely believers in certainly I am a believer in Christ, the Christ energy, and think of him as a true Messiah,
Yeah, it's one of those fascinating things where there is some legitimacy to using the name of Jesus. Whatever that is, there is a power associated with it, because there's just been too many stories about people that have had paranormal experiences, scary ones, right? Things like poltergeists or like demonic experiences, or just scary things that when you call out to the name of Jesus, there is a power to it, and it just knocks whatever, like the lower those lower vibrational entities, whatever they are, they flee. they run in the name of Jesus.
Yeah, I've heard that before, where
It's
you know,
true.
like the Hat Man, or the kind of the Slender Man kind of creatures that are scare the dickens out of people.
The the black-eyed kids.
and
yeah.
or the black-eyed children. If people invoke the name of Jesus, then it does seem to scare them off immediately. It's true.
Also, all the hundreds of years of exorcisms, using holy water and using the Latin text and invoking the name of Jesus and the Lord, and literally this stuff is recorded and it's real. Okay, so we know that exorcisms they're still utilized by the Vatican Church and by other people, and they do work. They're legitimate. So
Sometimes
What do
it
you
feels
think
like we need to
demons
exercise the
are?
Vatican Church. But
pardon, what was that?
I said sometimes it feels like we need to exercise the Vatican Church. But
Yes. Yeah, they are kind of they certainly are keeping a lot of information locked away in their archives that I would dearly like to see.
Oh my God.
Can you imagine?
I fantasize about getting to check out some of their libraries, but then I also remember that I couldn't read anything that was written. But
Yeah. Then who's the one that you would trust as being the translator?
Yeah.
So.
You know what else the Vatican is supposed to have that I'd really like is the all of the writings from South America, the conquistadors. Supposedly,
Right.
a lot of it was just destroyed, but I wonder how much of it was destroyed and how much of it was just confiscated back and is hiding in those archives.
Well, from the Mayans and the Incas.
the Inca
Yeah.
and the
How about the church? How about the Library of Alexandria? Apparently, not all of it was burned.
oh well, it was the most of it was burned, I believe,
But not all of it.
they
and the
say that
library
it
in
was burned.
Constantinople.
Yeah, I think that was an obfuscation. Yeah, a lot of it was taken and occulted by maybe secret societies. They say it was Muslims, but who knows? And then it was burned. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think
we
a lot
have
of that
bad habit of
information-
doing that. I think that's why we don't know anything about ourselves, or not very much. That was one of the great things about the Sumerians was they put their writings on tablets and fired them and then buried them, and they were just safely buried, and nobody could burn them. And they were there when we finally dug them up thousands of years later, 6,000 years later. We're able to find them, and they're still in great shape.
From the city of Ur, yeah.
It is interesting because, recent things that are happening now, they are still trying to occult our past. I find it fascinating. Göbekli Tepe gets mentioned a lot in our, in these circles. But it seemed like they were working on it again just recently. And they found, I think it was a carving or a picture of some sort of a penguin. And that would disrupt absolutely everything that we know about, like why in Turkey would there be an image of a penguin, and they completely shut down any sort of digging, and I think it was the government of Turkey as well, and I think the who is it, was it the it was some big giant global conglomeration came down there and told Turkey to all right, cut it out, stop the digging.
There is some powerful entity, whether you want to call it the Illuminati or whoever, but they try not to show their hand very often. They would prefer people not know that they really exist or just speculate that they exist. But once in a while, they show their hand so obviously to me anyway. And in one way they particularly do it is their obfuscation of any evidence of giants.
Mm-hmm.
We know that giants existed. We've seen photographs of the skeletons, but the skeletons themselves, they're always confiscated immediately after being discovered. This powerful organization shows up, confiscates the skeletons and disappears them. And it's happened all over the United States. The Smithsonian
All over the world.
was particularly bad in the United States, but it happens in Italy and Sardinia and Malta and
England for sure, yeah.
And to me, it's them showing their hand, and why they're willing to come, show their hand over something I consider to be fairly trivial. Like, so what? There were giants. What's the big deal? They're in the Bible, even. What
because it validates the Bible and it disrupts their narrative of evolution. Because obviously, some evolution does exist, but it messes with their narration. And they don't want that to get out there. It is fascinating. And also, right around that same time, they started taking all the giant's bones. That's when the first dinosaurs were discovered. And then they got to display some of these bones that they had found. And I don't believe in dinosaurs, personally. I believe in dragons. I know that there's dragons. Every single, every single, like China has talked about dragons. The Native Americans like the Mayans and things like that have talked about dragons. Dragons are very much real in my mind, but I don't believe in T-Rex.
I think the dragon mythos comes from the dinosaurs, right? Like if you dig up a skull of a velociraptor or something in your backyard, it's like, and this was thousands of years ago or whatever, it's like, dragons are real. See, I have evidence,
I would actually love to, for dragons to be real. And I kind of hope that they are too. I really do. But this whole thing, like with the Smithsonian and the Vatican and the Knights Templar and whoever you want to talk about as far as why they want to keep this stuff. I mean, Hugh Newman is, we've met him several times, and he's written numerous books, the Giants of England and the Giants of America. And interestingly, the Giants of America, a lot of them have been found with double rows of teeth, whereas the ones in England have not been found. There's only been found with single rows of teeth. And, their skull cavities are, quite a bit larger than ours. And of course, they've also found some skulls, legitimate skulls that have the elongated skulls, like Akhenaten. But it's like people say, oh well, they bound their heads when they're kids. Well, if you do that, you're still going to have the sagittal sutures that you can still see. But the ones that were actually real, that haven't been that were that way, they have no sagittal sutures whatsoever. That's the way this skull is. And so in our research, we found that the humans that were left behind after the gods no longer walked with man on the earth, they said, well, we want to get our gods to come back. Well, maybe if we look more like them, maybe we make our heads look like them.
Right. I think that's why they started wrapping the heads of children.
Right. It wasn't because of them. It actually increased the skull capacity, but it also, too, the ones that were the real aliens, or the real cousins, as we call them, or the Anunnaki, or whatever, they have no sagittal sutures. I mean, it's just not there.
And, one of those Peruvian skulls, I think it was in Ancient Aliens or something, where they took one of the skulls and they drilled into it to try and get some DNA out of it. And they were able to isolate the mitochondrial DNA. So they just know about the mother of these heads. And even though they were in Peru, ancient Peru, 2,000 years old Peru, the DNA of the mother came back as Scottish and Gaelic, really bizarre DNA for where it was.
Right.
Yeah, that is fascinating too. And one of my favorite, topics is that America really isn't the New World. Was definitely part of the old world. There's no way that it hadn't been known. I mean, that's one of those things that just doesn't get discussed enough, was things like cocaine being found with some of the mummies in Egypt. How is that even possible if there was no connection from the old world to the new world? Also, corn there was like pictures of corn depicted in like old paintings before supposedly 1492, before Columbus came over here and could have brought corn over. There had to have been much more connections than we know about, and it could have been like more seafaring folks like the Moors, or more like Atlanteans, some sort of I think the world was more technically evolved than we give them credit for, and it was more traveled than we give it credit for as well.
They had air flight, they had things such as that. They had different sources of power. They weren't brutalizing the world like we are currently using fossil fuels. That's why there was like pyramids found pretty much on every continent.
We like that theory where the pyramids were power plants. Power generators.
That was one of the things they did, yes, and communication.
And
communication. I've had some friends tell me that is, if you stand in a certain place, it was kind of like a telephone in the day, like for the elites. So the elite would stand in this pyramid, and maybe one in like South America, it would amplify, I guess maybe communication with your psychic communication, and they could speak. And so, and their idea was that like Babel was like, how they talk about like the Tower of Babel wasn't necessarily a place, but it was like a time, and it was like an empire. Like Babylon was kind of an empire where there was that global communication, and there was one language, and maybe there was something, maybe like the fall of Atlantis, that type of calamity was the idea of Babel being destroyed. Like humanity wasn't one people anymore after that. We were all scattered. That's like the idea of the fall of the tower.
Zechariah Sitchin had an interesting take on that. There are several biblical stories that have earlier precursors in the Sumerian tablets that he was translating. And one of them is the Tower of Babel. And the thing with the translation was there was a word called Shem, and it was translated as meaning the word, but Sitchin believed the word Shem meant spaceship, and that what the people were creating with their tower was actually a launching tower. And so but our Bible simplifies the story into a tower to heaven, but really a tower that creates a launching pad that can send a rocket to is the same thing. It's like a tower that helps you reach heaven,
or perhaps maybe a communication tower too. Maybe
and the Anunnaki were the ones that had this power, the power of spaceflight, and I think they didn't want just regular humans to have it, and so according to Sitchin, they knocked down the tower and took the people and scattered them to the four winds so that they.
Now we're just babbling on, Leslie.
So let's take another short break.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, we'll be back in just a few moments, everyone.
Leslie, you're kidding me.
What?
Our merchandise store is up?
Of course, my darling. All of our amazing concepts of shirts, mugs, and bumper stickers are ready to go.
No way.
Way.
Even my brilliant Egyptian concept that no one else ever thought of before?
Yes, that one too, and lots more. All at our new store at etsy.com/shop/abductions101.
Wow! I want a shirt and a mug and...
Well, Stephen, and all our curious listeners, just go to etsy.com/shop/abductions101 to see all of our unique designs.
I'm going there.
And we're back. Thanks, everyone, for rejoining us and staying with us. We have our own commercial now because we also have a merch store. We're shamelessly trying to promote it too,
Yeah.
Do you sell those cool shirts you guys are wearing in your merch store?
Yep. It's at etsy.com/shop/abductions101.
Yeah.
And I have some other fun designs.
I got my favorite one though, which is
Tom.
it's the symbol of the Ankh, the Egyptian symbol of the Ankh. It's like the round circle, then the T,
It's like a cross, but with a
Cross.
circle at the top.
Right.
You know.
So I thought about this like 20 years ago. I thought maybe I should make a bumper sticker. This Ankh if you are, and then Egyptian. But instead of saying the word Egyptian, it's like one
It's
of
like
those
an Egyptian
one of
person.
those
you know,
Egyptian
going,
people. So like a person has to look at it. Says so it's an Ankh symbol, then if, then you are, then the Egyptian guy. You know, so
It's our biggest seller.
it's our biggest seller so far. Yeah, we sold 2, I think.
I know the shop's brand new, so. But anyway, that's what that commercial was about, or one of them anyway.
Yeah.
And so I feel like we're leaving Thomas out of the conversation too much here. Thomas, what do you think about some of this stuff we've been talking about?
Thomas, you're muted, buddy.
I love hearing all of Nate's laying on hand stories because I mean I grew up in a religious home more or less, but I was really attracted to the Peter Popoff Miracle Water Industries and what was it, like the Steve Martin Leap of Faith movie about the different like revival churches that would go around and they'd have the earpieces in. It would be like,
Yeah.
all right, the girl on the left, you know, in the third row, and they would like know all this insight. So I guess I've always
That
been the
little Mexican
eternal.
down there. Throw some gold dust on it.
Yeah, you'll fall for it. They always that family falls for it every time. But I guess I always go to this default that if any of this is even true, then it's also been co-opted by entrepreneurs and military and government and shysters and
Yeah.
everything. Whether
Shysterism is alive and well.
whether
that's
it's
for
yeah,
sure.
aliens
always has
or
been.
Bigfoot or remote viewing, pretty much every one of these concepts has been weaponized by someone, either industry or military. And that's usually where I let my brain go wild, is like, okay, let's accept this as being true. For example, you were talking before about the genetic manipulation and splicing out sickle cell and all these other options that they had. And there was also almost like the Zecharia Sitchin alien workshop where they take, you know, monkeys and make Homo sapiens sapiens out of them all. And humans have tried to do something similar. There was the Humanzi experiment by
Yeah.
Mhm.
Ilyan Ivanovich, I think, that
Yeah.
they were trying to breed people with, I believe the actual paperwork said orangutans, although it was essentially that they wanted to
Yes.
breed people with apes and with gorillas in order to create these super soldiers. And it does seem like this would be a thing that a government would try and do, or private industry. And I would be shocked if that didn't exist out there somewhere, because the premise of that would just either be profitable or it would give you a military edge. So even my
Right.
skepticism tends to sit by the wayside, in that industry or military has tried to make some of these things happen, even if they don't. Remote viewing's another great example, right? It was seen as sort of a new age wishy-washy practice that, you know, you would ask someone what their sign was and you would throw some patchouli at them, and it was kind of like a
Yeah.
big joke. Although the military was also like, well, let's just assume this isn't a joke. How can we weaponize this?
Well, if the
So that's
Russians
always
can
where I
do it,
go.
we can do it, damn it. Right?
Or better yet, if the Russians are doing it, we better do it.
Right. That's
Right.
what Operation Stargate was all about, was the remote
Yeah.
viewers, you know,
Yeah,
the military.
We believe Pat Price, the guy, was conveniently died. You know, the
Yeah.
the cop from Los Angeles, from Burbank, actually, I think he was, and he happened to be just quite good at it. In fact, Elizondo knew Pat Price before Pat Price supposedly committed suicide, but a very, very strange way.
No, you're thinking of
Phil Schneider?
Schneider.
But
Pat Price, he was a remote viewer that
Yeah.
came up with the data on Mount Hayes. Mount Hayes is a joint military / alien base in Alaska. And he's the one that spotted it while remote viewing. He was flying over towards Russia, I guess, and felt what he called an attractor, where they're kind of pulled in to something that's interesting or that they feel they should see. And he would not be quiet about it. He kept talking about it and trying to get everyone to know that there were these advanced, he did not see aliens, by the way, he called them advanced humans,
Right.
which again goes a lot way to helping promote our theory.
Oh yeah, he died of a heart attack, right?
But what he did is he went to Las Vegas, and the day before he died, he met with a member of the NSA, and then the next day he started complaining of severe stomach cramps, and later died from what they called a heart attack. Mm-hmm. But his body was instantly cremated and not released to his family. It was very strange the way it played out. I think the NSA killed him because he just wouldn't keep his mouth shut, like he was supposed to. That was a common practice, we think, back when Project Blue Book was in its heyday.
I think it's still probably happening today.
Yeah. I agree.
Well, you mentioned Phil Schneider, and this is another. If we were to wind it back to the Bigfoot stuff, Phil Schneider was one of the first people that I came across talking about these deep underground military bases and all this like subterraneous networks of government projects. And I haven't seen a lot of overlap between Bigfoot and Phil Schneider, a lot of UFO stuff, but there's also that, was it the Missing 400? About all these people, the Missing 411, all these people that go missing around these cave systems that you can basically overlay missing people with Bigfoot sightings with the natural parks cave system. And it always makes me think of Phil Schneider, because Phil Schneider probably had his own map that you could lay on top of the Missing 411 as well.
Yeah,
there is a grid system. You can actually see there's a grid system that shows where there's the Bigfoot sightings and then the people who go missing in national parks, and you can overlay them, and there's really
a lot of correlation.
A lot of correlation for sure.
A lot of these missing 411s. We just saw that documentary the other day, by the way, and I'm so glad I did. A lot of these people reported seeing UFOs, like stalking them the day before they disappeared forever. And one of them was really interesting. He was taken, and then they discovered he had a vasectomy. And they said, "Oh, well, we don't need you then," and they put him back, And that goes a long way to what we think that they want program, these, what they want these people for is their hybrid alien breeding program, because, we studied it with. Who's the guy? Professor David M. Jacobs. He did 10,000 regressions, hypnotic regressions on abductees, and I like using his work because it's a large data pool.
Yeah.
And he said 11% of abductees are women who they've been used as incubators. They're impregnated, and then during an abduction, and then 4 months later they're taken again, and the fetus is stolen. And Phil Schneider was the one of the people that gives us the information about the Dulce, New Mexico Air Force Base, which is this secret base under the Archuleta Mesa in New Mexico. And that's where he had his encounter, where his fingers were blown off. A couple
of his fingers. Yeah.
Yeah. They accidentally knocked down a wall, and on the other side were tall grays and reptiloids, and they got into a firefight with the Green Berets and Schneider and his work crew that were there. And it's Dulce that gives us the information about where I think these fetuses come from. It wasn't Schneider. He gave us the other information, but another person from the Dulce facility. He was a security guard, and he was not allowed. The top 5 levels of this underground base are human only, but the bottom 2 are joint alien-human secret levels. And one night he snuck down to the lower levels and discovered all these vats that are growing hybrid alien children in them. And we think that's where they take the fetuses to finish gestating them in these vats.
You know, and this stuff I wouldn't have necessarily believed, but when I started to believe it was when we were hearing from obstetricians that were using things like MRIs and basically ultrasound, and basically confirming that yes, this woman, her fetus was 5 centimeters in size. She was pregnant, and then all of a sudden, looks like she was never pregnant even once. And it's not just happening just one time to some of these women. Sometimes it's 3-4 times.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing.
All their children stolen away into the
Yeah.
night, you know. And then sometimes years later, they're introduced to their toddlers, you know. And we heard this one thing on a recent podcast was that a lot of these women, you know, they coddle these babies and these toddlers, and then when they come back, if you shine a black light on them, wherever they were being touched by the babies, they fluoresce a little bit, like the babies have developed a kind of a bioluminescence, and possibly our cousins, maybe because they've lived underground for thousands and thousands of years, that they actually have become where their sweat is bioluminescent.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It always seems to come down to eugenics. For sometimes I think about, if you're talking about our cousins, I guess is a nice way of putting it. Whatever these psychos are, and some of it may be just for survival. But it does seem that like maybe some of our government has been co-opted by them. And I think about some of the elites and what they have done, because I mean, if you think about everything that like Bill Gates does, it's all about eugenics as well. And I think about, you were mentioning New Mexico. It makes me think of like Jeffrey Epstein and in Zorro Ranch in New Mexico, and the different things and the experiments that he was doing there. He had like a ton of women there, and he was like implanting embryos, and he was doing bizarre like genetic experiments, and there could be a ton of little Jeffrey Epstein's running around all over the place, and we don't know. Like, they could be little kids right now growing up. And it also makes me think of someone like Peter Nygaard that was like paying prostitutes to get pregnant, and then he was taking the fetuses and using it to kind of extend his own life. Like in a weird vampiric, almost like Kronos, like Saturn eating his children, sort of life extension things. Yeah, these people are psychotic, and
you look like a Genghis Khan. That to this day in China, about 1 in 200 people on the Asian continent are genetically related that we know of to Genghis Khan. I mean, this guy he died in his early 30s, right? But he did his best to impregnate as many women as he could. Same thing with Alexander the Great. And, we've got other people that we won't talk about that are doing the same thing right now, that are multi-billionaires.
Wasn't there some doctor?
I was going to mention him, yeah.
Yeah. What was his name? And,
we're talking about the great and powerful Elon Musk, the Genghis Khan of our lifetime, or of our time right now.
No, this was a doctor who...
there's another guy.
Yeah, fertility doctor, and didn't he like impregnate? The women think they're being given their husband's sperm, right? But what he's doing is he's jacking off in the other room, and then injecting them with his sperm. He's got like 95 kids that DNA has. Yeah, they
isn't that how you're supposed to do it?
Yeah, I think his name was Jack, wasn't it?
In the time of 23andMe, they're like, wait, I have like 10 brothers and sisters in town. And then you find out, it's pretty fascinating.
And they all had the same doctor. He's got like 95 kids, it's like, oh my God. And no one knows exactly what to charge him with, because what's the crime exactly?
you got a healthy baby right out of it.
So. What's the big deal, right?
Hey, their daddy was a doctor. Yeah.
Probably going to be smart, right?
Well, we should be probably wrapping up pretty soon.
Right? We're at the hour-and-a-half mark, and that's when my legs start to cramp. My old lady.
Also, we run out of space.
Yeah, that's true. We're only allowed to upload so much at a time. But I wanted to give you guys a chance to wrap it up and tell us. Do you have anything you'd like to promote?
Sure. The main show is called the Reality Czars, and me and Thomas, we're working on some interesting stuff right now. We are working on a comic, and I think in the next, so everyone listen out, I guess in the next couple months, we're going to be booking some more cryptid folks. Cryptid used to be our bread and butter, and then we started having all kinds of interesting conversations. So we're going to get back to the basics and start talking some cryptids and Bigfoot and aliens and fun stuff like that. And we're gearing up for our big release of our awesome new comic book. It is called Does Bigfoot Exist? And you can go to doesbigfootexist.com and join the Kickstarter. So everyone just go there, sign up. The more people that do it, it helps with the algorithm. So even if you don't give us a dime, just go over there and just put your email in there, say you're going to help. And so when we do release it, it will go to more people. It'll come up in their recommended, and it will help us get more eyes on it. And it's going to be a really cool, awesome thing. So like you were asking us, do we have, theories about the origins of Bigfoots? And so we actually discuss every single Bigfoot that you can think of. We've talked to some major Bigfoot experts, and we've gotten the seal of approval from them as well. And we have like biblical Bigfoot, psychic Bigfoot, angelic Nephilim, weird Bigfoot, glowing Bigfoot. Just every weird kind of Bigfoot you can think of is in there. And it's a short, cute little. It's in the form of a chick tract. This little comic, and so it's something that someone's going to pick up, and like you can put it in one of those little interesting mailboxes, the little neighborhood mailboxes, and just spread this little fun little cryptid propaganda. It's something you can leave in in a doctor's office, or in a bar on the just fun places. People are going to love it. Thomas, you want to talk a little bit more about that?
You forgot homeless Bigfoot, who's also in there. And then it gets into the biblical stuff. The Esau stuff is in there. There's also some claims from Mormon preachers that also claim to have encountered the biblical Cain that was a Bigfoot. We basically have every single conventional and unconventional Bigfoot reference and sighting accounted for in this book. And like Nate was saying, these are formatted after these chick tracts. And if you're not familiar with the chick tract, you should totally look them up. But they're basically like these little religious pamphlets. But ours is not pushing religion. Ours is pushing Bigfoot. And the real whole point is to be able to get so many of these things made that people could just get a huge pack of them and just leave them out all over the place. Just leave them at bars and on pay. I don't think payphones exist anymore, but whatever the equivalent of a payphone might be, just next to the phone chargers, maybe at the airports. But that's the whole premise, is that we want to make so many of these things that people are, willing to just put them out into the world for free, just to get more and more people interested in this. And I don't know. I think that we're on the cusp of like a Bigfoot resurgence, right? I grew up with Harry and the Hendersons in the mid to late 80s as being like this big Bigfoot thing. And there hasn't really been a lot of other Bigfoot pop culture events that brought him back into the popular consciousness. So we're hoping that this comic does a little bit of that, just paying it forward a little bit. Thank you for Harry and the Hendersons.
Wasn't Gilgamesh? He had a
Enduku, whatever.
Yeah, what was that name?
It was Enduku.
Enduku.
Yeah,
Yeah, he had his friend was like a wild man, or maybe a Bigfoot. I think.
We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
Do you have a non-binary Bigfoot yet?
What?
Do we have an
non-binary?
Only in California. That's a San Francisco Bigfoot.
Anyway.
Wonderful. Well, where can they hear your podcast?
You can find it anywhere. Like Spotify, Apple, all the fun stuff. We go live on Rumble, and you can find us. We are not allowed on YouTube anymore because we said too many spicy things in the time of in the lockdown times. You can say, I don't know if this is going on YouTube, so I'll be careful with my words. But we talked about medical misinformation. They say we were kicked off the YouTubes.
Yeah.
Well,
please go and follow us. Yeah, give us a 5-star rating and review and all that fun stuff. And definitely go to doesbigfootexist.com.
Great.
And we want to thank you both very much for joining us. And I know you have a third co-host, Tony, is it? but he didn't join us. You say he sometimes joins.
He's
in,
elusive
right?
like Bigfoot. It's like a Bigfoot stoning
Yeah.
and Tony
It's a
sighting.
Bigfoot sighting.
A-
Okay,
a-
when he
A
shows
Tony
up.
sighting, huh? We'll keep our eyes open for him then.
You got to
Okay.
leave out peanut butter sandwiches, and sometimes that lures him out.
Yeah, you have to gift him, just like Bigfoot.
Yep.
Well, thank you. Stay with us for a few moments after we stop the recording, if you would.
it's just, you know the drill.
Yeah, just hold on, and I'll. We thank you again, and say good night to all our listeners.
Good night to all our listeners.
Bye
Thank
now.
you very much for having us.